I think you can probably faintly hear Americans throughout this country going like this in response to the judge's decision there. Look, I think she's made the most important point here, which is please make sure it doesn't happen again. And this is not the way we can run a judicial system. But with that said, having 3 daughters who were all victims of Larry Nasser, there is a level of understanding by this court, and at least based on what we're seeing in terms of the response on social media, by just about everyone in this country, that a father might lose it for a moment with Larry Nasser inside that courtroom. So I think that this is the decision that everyone would have supported for Randall Margraves in this contempt hearing. That becomes a small but I think very symbolic moment, because he's feeling what I think so many are feeling, but he's feeling it even more so. He's even angrier, as I think so many can understand and appreciate in the context of this hearing. I'm Dan Abrams. This is the Law&Crime Network. We are continuing to cover. This is the second set of sentencing procedures going on in the Larry Nasser case. Different county, different charges that he pled guilty to, but you can expect a similar result. But the one question I think that so many have been asking is, why did it take so long? How did this happen? Why weren't there warning signs? Why weren't people believing the people who were pointing out some of this happening earlier? Well, one of the people to point out some of the problems in American gymnastics, particularly with the culture that was being cultivated, was 1996 gold medalist Dominique Moceanu. She was a huge star back in the day, one of the most celebrated gymnasts in American history, and she had been complaining about and pointing out, complaining is probably too soft a word, had been brave enough to come forward and talk about what she had said had happened to her in training sessions back in 2004. It wasn't directly related to Larry Nasser, but it sure was pretty close because he was there. And she joins us now via Skype. We're thrilled, Dominique, that you've agreed to join us. We really appreciate it. So let me ask you, for those who are not as familiar, they're going to see you and they're going to say, of course, I know her as the author, as the gymnast, etc. But take us back a little bit in terms of what you had said and when you had said it about what you experienced.
Well, the first time I had the courage to speak up was in my interview with HBO in 2008. I remember distinctly taking a moment to collect myself and ask myself, am I really going to say it? Am I going to say the words out loud that the culture is abusive and that the environment is toxic? And I took a deep breath with my husband's support. He said, go for it. He said, it's the truth. And I said, well, there's going to be severe backlash, and I know that the community is going to try to attack me for it. And it happened. I was blacklisted and attacked. And then in 2012, I came out with my memoir detailing much more of the in-depth experiences that I had over the years, and really wanted to bring about change. I also needed to heal. And the first step to healing is to discuss and talk about your experiences so that you can try to help others and also understand why this happened and why this went on and that it wasn't acceptable.
And Dominique, you've talked about sort of the almost frightening fear culture that you had to endure at this ranch in Texas. But take us through a little bit of first what happened to you and then how that's sort of indirectly, I guess it's really directly connected to Larry Nasser.
Well, the culture of psychological abuse at the national team training camps and through many of the elite women's program coaches is why this manifested into an open door for a serial predator to have. And it really allowed this door to be open because the environment of control and manipulation was very prevalent at the elite level of our sport. There's so many coaches that bought into that philosophy and drank the Kool-Aid of this is how you have to treat your athletes to succeed. You have to beat them down, you have to break them down, break their spirit, tell them they're no good, make them do thousands of repetitions until they finally will learn how to hit like a machine in competition. And as soon as you make a mistake, you're ignored. It's either because you're too fat or all these things. And these were parts of the culture that were cultivated by the Karolis when they came to this country over 30 years ago. So they kind of really made it even more prominent, and they started utilizing these techniques for many, many years. And once they had a little bit of success, people were like, oh, this is maybe how it has to be done, instead of having expert professionals in the field to say, hey, pull them aside and say, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. There is a healthy way to create champions. We all know this. There are many champions out there who had healthy experiences, and they weren't abused. But the fact that it went on so long in our culture is because of the fear and intimidation. As soon as anybody spoke up, your job was lost, or the athletes were shamed. And those kinds of things don't make you want to speak up. I can tell you, I've had a lot of hate on social media. I've had people be really critical, really mean. I've had to block a lot of people just because I don't really need that. And I know the truth, and I know why I spoke up, and I've helped a lot of people. So I don't need those people to tell me their opinions about that.
Wait, so even to this day, you're getting hate on social media?
Every now and then, yes. There are people that reach out and try to twist the narrative and say things that are just cruel. And you know how that's the nature of social media.
Yeah.
And I just have learned that it's unfortunate, but it's a part of the culture too, that you're going to get these people who want to bully you on social media. And you know what? I don't have time for that. And I'm not going to have any of it. I've learned to defend myself, and I've learned to stick up for myself. And if I have to block you because I don't really want to be a part of that, then so be it.
That's awesome. Sorry, I don't know how else to say it. That's just kind of awesome. All right. So the Karolis, you mentioned them. They were the sort of star Olympic trainers. And some have suggested that part of the reason that Larry Nasser was allowed to thrive in his abuse the way he was because he kind of portrayed himself as the good guy, the guy who could kind of save you to some degree from the very difficult situation that the Karolis laid out. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, absolutely. He was the one, if you can believe this, in the toxic environment that exists, the one that was the predator was the nice guy. Can you believe that? It is unbelievable to me when I look back how actually we all believed he was the nice guy. He gave us candy when he knew we weren't allowed to eat, when we were on strict diets, when food was forbidden, and all of these things. But remember, he also was a doctor. He took an oath to do no harm. And yet, he saw psychological abuse. Why would he have to sneak us candy if there wasn't anything going on that was wrong, right? There was this psychological control in the environment, and then he manipulated it into making all of the athletes believe he was the best friend. He was the one taking care of you, looking out for you. Yet, he let athletes probably compete on injuries that they shouldn't, but he was Marta Karolyi's guy. This is something that hasn't been drawn enough of a association with. Marta really, really pushed to have him around. She always wanted him around because he would tell her what she wanted to hear. And when it came to injuries, I'm sure he was unethical. I mean, you just have to look no further than barely any of the athletes have any documentation of their medical history as athletes from the Karolyi Ranch. I don't even have mine. And I'm sure there are times that I had care that I needed probably some medical form in a document, right? So those kinds of things really need to be looked into. And I know there's 2 separate investigations going on. I know the senators are trying to look into independent investigation as well. The Texas Rangers are supposed to be doing their job as well as a detective down in Texas. So let's see where the story unfolds. But I guarantee you, when the 2015 national team member, this female, was assaulted and molested by Nasser at the camp, there were adults around that knew. At that time, he should have left, and they should have kicked him off of this immediately because they're now going to be guilty of not reporting, right?
Yep. So, and I think that now we have obviously all come to realize the scope of this, and I don't think any medical quote-unquote treatment that Nasser was offering to girls at that time is being looked back on as somehow necessary, or that he was somehow, performing the needed medical care. So I think everything is going to be second-guessed, rightly so, that Nasser did back in the day. Did you see the dad today go after him in court?
I did see the father go after him in court, and quite honestly, we all know and agree that obviously violence isn't the answer. However, can you blame the guy?
Yep. I think that's the way that just about everyone feels. You got 3 daughters, guys sitting right there who abused them. That's tough. That's very, very tough to control your emotions, and I think we all kind of agree that the judge dealt with this in the right way. Let me wrap this up by asking you what you think we should happen now. I know that you've become a really important advocate in this area. Talk to us a little bit about what we can actually do now moving forward to prevent the Nassers of the world from happening again.
Well, we've already done a lot. We passed with many gymnasts that were supportive, and many people behind the scenes, along with the senators and Congress, to help pass the law that we just recently passed. So that is actually going to help all children in all youth sports. And that's a tremendous victory that has been a long time coming, and I'm really fortunate to have had a voice on the subject. I was able to testify last year in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I was honored to have a part and have a voice in the matter, because this has been 10 years that I've been speaking up about this environment. And had people listened before, perhaps we would have, helped even more gymnasts not come to this situation that we're in now. However, there's many things that need to be done, and some of the things have already begun to unfold, like cutting ties with the Karoli Ranch and no more National Team Training Center there, where many victims were abused, and moving forward, creating funds for all of the victims to have therapy and have a support system for them, but also I believe dismantling USA Gymnastics and restarting the organization if they can possibly do it. I honestly don't know if that is going to withstand all of the lawsuits. I think it's not looking great. However, we have to see what unfolds. I know there are new organizations that want to start. This is uncharted territory that we're in. Our sport has never been in this dire situation. So USA Gymnastics is hanging on by a thread. And the entire board has been turned over.
Yep.
Their USOC has threatened to decertify USA Gymnastics within until February 28th, I believe, is the deadline to reinstate some new board members. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that's really unknown. But I know that the only way to move forward is to address the issues very sternly and start making drastic changes to the policies. Give the athletes a handbook, educate them on predatory behaviors, educate them on what abuse is, and the difference between tough coaching and abusive coaching. There are differences, and nobody is against tough coaching. Tough coaching can be good, but you cannot demean and destroy someone's self-esteem to try to win medals. I mean, that's not healthy for anybody. And so we've got to educate our coaches too, who have been conditioned with this type of coaching style for so many years. There's so many things that need to happen. I mean, this has only just begun.
Well, I think that moving forward, one of the great assets that the cause is going to have is you, having smart, passionate, eloquent people who have lived this and know how important it is and care so much about both the gymnastics side of it, the athletic side of it, and also the mental side of it, in addition, of course, to the horrible abuse. Dominique, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate you coming on the Law&Crime Network.
Thank you so much for having me. It was good to be with you.
And I mean it. I mean, having people like her out there is going to keep reminding us and keep leading us to say, wow, this has been going on for so long. She's been out there since 2008 talking about it, and so passionate, so well-spoken. And really, look, it's people like that make sure that you feel it in here. All right, I want to go back to the sentencing of Dr. Larry Nasser. Remember that, as Dominique was just explaining to us, her position is that the sort of culture of abuse that existed in United States gymnastics allowed someone like Larry Nasser to thrive, that he portrayed himself as the good guy, as opposed to the abusive behavior on the part of the coaches who were pushing them too hard. And Larry Nasser would say, come in here and, you know, I'll give you candy and this and that. It's just so horrifying, but it's so important then again that this sentencing continue with these voices being heard. This is now, again, the second sentencing of Larry Nasser. He's already been sentenced in one county where there were 7 counts. There are now 3 counts in this county. Let's go back to something that happened just a little bit earlier this morning in the Larry Nasser sentencing hearing.